Rockstars, welcome to Epiphanish, a podcast that will change how you perceive everything. Maybe. And for you to recognize where you have choice and options in your own life. I'm your host and guide, Lisa Westgate, an award-winning mental health advocate, best-selling author, rockstar, life and business strategist of almost a decade, and mum of three. Remember to share this episode and your Epiphanish moment on socials, and please like, follow, share and subscribe on your favourite podcast platforms. Hey Rockstars, good to have you here again on the Epiphanish podcast. Today we're going to be having a good old chat about language. As a long-time pedant, language has always been one of those things that just makes sense to me and stands out. So what I mean by that is, even as a kid, I remember finding spelling mistakes in books that I was reading. My brain, for some reason, focuses on language. I have a brain for languages. It just really likes them. Over the years, I've studied multiple languages. I did French at high school. I'm currently studying French. I've just clocked over 4 years on Duolingo. Give me a shout out if you're learning a language on Duolingo. But in that time, I've swapped between languages. So I get bored. I started out actually learning German 4 years ago on Duolingo because, believe it or not, there was a TV show that I really liked and it was in German, and I wanted to be able to understand what they were saying. Even though I was reading the subtitles, I wanted to know how accurate the subtitles were. Surely I can't be the only one that wonders these things. Anyway, so that started me learning German. Another reason that I thought I would learn German was because my great-grandmother spoke German, and it's also one of the root origin languages for the cultural language of Yiddish, which is very common in Eastern European Jews, of which is the ancestry of my family. So at the time, I had the idea that if I could learn German and then maybe I learnt a bit of Hebrew, I could pick up Yiddish because it's actually written in using the Hebrew alphabet. So I thought, well, maybe if I can get my head around both of those languages, I can smush them together and I can start learning Yiddish, and I can actually speak to my grandmother in Yiddish, which was one of the languages. She spoke 7 or 8 languages at one point. And it was one of her languages. Unfortunately, she passed away before I got the chance to consolidate all my learning, and I still can't speak Yiddish apart from the few words that are probably, swear words and stuff that I picked up as a kid from family. But I've always had this interest in language. So like I said, I did French at high school. I got bored of the German after a little while. Studying after a couple of years of doing that on Duolingo, so I thought I'll pick French back up again because surely it's still in my brain somewhere. So I started doing French, and then I did go back to Hebrew and play around with that because I lived a year overseas. I lived in Israel for most of 1999, and by the end of that year my understanding of Hebrew was pretty good. I couldn't speak it very well, and I certainly couldn't read and write it, but my conversational Hebrew wasn't terrible. And to be honest, it is at least a multilingual country, so pretty much everybody that speaks Hebrew speaks English, and a lot of people also speak Arabic. So there's a lot of people that have 3 languages under their belt in those cultural areas where there's a lot of different influences. So languages and language and the use of language, finding spelling mistakes in books. Actually had the opportunity as a teenager, I'm pretty sure, to proofread and spell check a chapter in a textbook that was written by my father, and he said, before I send it off to the editor, can you read over it, just looking for those spelling and grammatical and syntax errors, does the sentence make sense, all those sorts of things, which have always just kind of come inherently to me in some way. I can't tell you the origin of why that is, but errors in particular, so spelling mistakes or double spaces where they shouldn't be, those sorts of things just really stick out to me like a sore thumb. Like, I can't not see them usually. I've got a pretty good strike rate. So it appears that my brain kind of always has had an interest in language and communication, even from when I was quite young. Rolling that into kind of the relevance of the space that I'm in now, when I went and studied neurolinguistic programming for the first time. So if this is all new to you, feel free to skip back to episode 1 of the podcast, which is my origin story. And I share a bit in that about my path and coming out of ambulance and into coaching and sort of what that all looked like. So if you're like, what? You studied what? Feel free to skip back, go listen to episode 1 and then come back in here. But when I started learning NLP as a framework for understanding me and my world and the world that I lived in and how other people relate to the world and all that sort of magical stuff that it is, neurolinguistic programming, it was definitely the language of it and the linguistics and understanding the power of language and intentional language that I think really hooked me in, that really got me interested in, what is this all about? And over that time, so that period of time, 18 months or so that I was in that study mode, which was what helped me move through my mental health challenges, that awareness and the increasing understanding within me of the power and influence of language and the language choices we make, the words we choose, that really blew my mind and appealed to me. I was like, hang on a minute, you're saying that just by changing the way I speak about a situation, therefore changes my relationship to the situation. I feel differently about that if I speak differently about that. Holy shit, right? Like, it presses, I don't know about you, but for me, it pressed a lot of my too good to be true buttons. Like, really? Can it be that simple? Are you sure? And I certainly pushed back. I was like, it can't be that easy. And yes and no is the answer. So when it comes to language, there's a couple of things that I sort of want to lay down as foundations, right? Words and language, let's take these as given, right? Have energy, have vibration, have a word. A word is not just a word, right? Now, when someone says something really mean to you, like really nasty, very cutting, very specific to you, very personal, that has an effect on you, right? It elicits feelings in us. Words aren't just words. They hold an energy, and then when we throw them at each other, somewhat maliciously, is often the time when we become really aware that words aren't just words. And so that old, almost nursery rhyme adage that people say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never hurt me. And I think, I certainly grew up where that was given to us by our parents as a way to deal with, bullying or hate or nastiness and stuff at school. But unfortunately, a lot of the time, they're wrong. And words can hurt, and words can cut, and words can really create an environment in which you then have to live. Words from other people, but also words from yourself, and the language about how you speak to yourself, and the words that you use around self is also something I'm going to touch on. So I think let's assume as a given that words are a form of energy. They have some sort of energy or vibration or resonance, right? Literally, if you're interested in, the science of vocalizations and, things like sounds like holy sounds. So like the om sound has a particular resonance to it, which is actually at a particular frequency, which actually elicits a specific feeling within people, right? Which is why it's used in meditation practice and things like that. So these things are not random. They're not, just like pulled out of thin air. There's rationale and there's reason behind the meanings of things. You think about the words that we consider curse words or swear words. They tend to be, monosyllabic. They're words that you can sort of spit at somebody, right? Because it's got that venom energy to it when you use those words with a malicious intent. Cool. So, keep on my train of thought. So words have an energy and they have a vibration and they have a frequency. So it's important to be mindful of the language and the words that we're using. Now, language, the way we communicate generally, is actually only about 7% words. Most of it is body language, and it's also things like tonality and pitch and volume. It's also how we say those words is actually more important than the words themselves. Quick story. I remember when, this will illustrate the point, I promise. 700 years ago, when I was an ambulance paramedic, I remember transferring a man back to his nursing home, and he had had a significant stroke that had affected the language, the word formation part of his brain. And so he essentially had a disconnect from what he was thinking he wanted to say and what would actually come out of his mouth. And he was left with, post-stroke, one word. I think it was a gibberish word from memory. I can't remember. Let's say the word was mesh. Okay, I'm just going to make up a word. But he had one word, mesh. He could say mesh, mesh, mesh. So he had this one word that he could say on repeat, but he couldn't access other words. But I'm convinced that he thought in normal language, and his thoughts were in, he had a whole vocabulary for those, but the connection between that part of his brain and the part of his brain that actually formed words to come out his mouth to speak, there was some sort of, incongruence because of the stroke and the area of the brain that had been affected by his stroke. So he had this one word. We were traveling quite a distance, from my recollection, to his nursing home. So I was with him in the back of the ambulance for, I'll say, around 45 minutes. And we got to know each other. So I had, a file, and I knew his name, and I could use his name, and I introduced myself using my name, and we ended up having a conversation, albeit, it wasn't in depth, but we could converse, we could communicate. Because what I paid attention to was not the word he was saying over and over, but the intonation, the inflection in his voice when he said it, the urgency with which he spoke, all of those were clues for me to get an indicator of how he was feeling. I'll give you an example, and I don't want to mock the situation, but to give you an example of what I mean about the other elements of communication. So we're traveling along and we hopped in the car and, hi, John, I don't know his name. I'm Lisa. I'll be looking after you for the drive. How are you feeling? And he said, mesh. Okay, cool. Well, that sounds a lot like okay. I said, all right, well, you let me know if something happens and, I can do something for you and we'll figure it out. And he said, mesh. Yeah, okay, cool. He seems on board, right? So noticing it's the intonation, it's the inflections, right? At some point along this drive, I'm not sure what happened, but all the lights went out in the back of the vehicle and we were in darkness momentarily. But in that moment, he panicked. And all I heard from this lovely man on the stretcher in the back of the ambulance was mesh. He was panicked. He was stressed out. And so I reached out in the dim light and I held his hand. I said, it's okay. I'm sure they'll be back on in a second. And then of course the lights came back on and it was fine. And he looked at me, and he was so relieved. And so we had a communication. We had an interaction, even though he didn't have the words to communicate in the way that I'm communicating with you now. But there are so many other factors around communication aside from the words themselves. So I think that that's a really interesting thing to be aware of, that the way that you say things, how you speak, again, to others, but also to yourself. How are you speaking to yourself? All of that creates an energy and a resonance and a vibration and a frequency. All right? Cool. So having that understanding, so to speak, I have said and will say and continue to say, full credit to the incredible James Greenshields. If you don't know who he is, he was a major in the Australian Army. He was deployed to, I believe it was Iraq. I might have that wrong. And he was at the front of a convoy of his soldiers. And one of the tanks in the convoy hit an IED and got blown up. And some of his men were lost. And he had his own challenge with PTSD and trauma and recovery, and came back to Australia and, had his whole journey. If you're interested in that, definitely go check out James Greenshields. I know he's on Facebook. He's probably on other platforms. He runs the Resilient Leaders Foundation and has done a lot of work in terms of mindset and well-being, in particular in the men's space. He's a legend. So one of the things that he taught me that I have adopted and taken on as my own and spread far and wide is that often we can feel overwhelmed at all the things that we've got to manage, where we're concerned about our loved ones' well-being. We want to make sure everybody's happy. We want to keep our boss happy. We've got all these people typically that we're looking out for and we're looking after and we're concerned about, and all the things, and then we're in overwhelm because we're doing all the stuff and we're thinking about all the things. And what James said at some point, which really, really resonated with me because I've held on to it for years, is that there are actually only 3 things that you can control in your life. Only 3 that you are truly responsible for. You can have influence elsewhere, but there are 3 things that you are in charge of completely. They are, feel free to make a note, they are your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So I'm going to repeat that. Your thoughts, your words, and your actions. One more time. Your thoughts, your words, and your actions, right? And the reason I'm emphasizing different elements of this is, yes, it is thoughts, words, and actions, and yours, not anyone else's. Not anyone else's thoughts, not anyone else's words, not anyone else's actions. Can you influence others? Yes, you can. You can set an example or you can lodge a preference, but ultimately that's going to be up to them, right? Just as ultimately for you, those things are up to you. You can be in charge of your thoughts, your words, and your actions, right? And when it sounds simple, only 3 things, but running those 3 things mindfully and consciously and deliberately, that's like a full-time human existence, guys, right? So let's have a look at those. Your thoughts. I know, for some of you, what do you mean I can control my thoughts? My thoughts control me, right? Some of us are in phases of our lives where we are just holding on, right? And we're riding the roller coaster of thoughts and feelings, and we're just holding on and hoping for the best. And we feel like a passenger in our lives. And I get that. And by God, I've been there multiple times. I really, really get that. And you do have the potential, even if you don't feel like it now, to control your thoughts, to be in charge of them, to choose which ones you allow to continue and which ones you don't. So there's an old video I did, I'm going to upload it to YouTube, but it talks about we work in spirals. Human beings work in spirals, right? You can either spiral up or you can spiral down. And often it is our thoughts and our words that will determine whether we're on an up spiral or we're on a down spiral, right? But our brain likes to chase things, right? So if we point it in an up direction, it'll chase them up, which is great. If we point them down, it'll chase them down, right? And down and down and down the spiral you'll go. So thoughts, I appreciate, might be challenging for some people right now, the idea that you can be in charge of your thoughts. If that's something you want me to talk more about, let me know via email or socials or comments on YouTube, and I can do another episode where I can talk about thoughts. We can have that conversation about, how to control them, how to let go of them, how to not let them run you, how you can be back in the driver's seat of your life in terms of that. The one I really want to highlight today, given that we're talking about language, is your words, right? Your thoughts, your words, your actions. So your words, again, and I know I've said it before, but it's your words in relation to use with other people. It's also your words when you are talking to yourself. Now, whether that's out loud or in your head or in writing or, all the different ways that we can communicate with ourselves. Let's talk about the words that we're using and the energy of those words. If this is something that you want to explore further for yourself, I have got a mini course that is called Mind Your Fucking Language. I think it's maybe 4 or 5 modules, very short videos, and just bringing into awareness a handful of words that you may choose to relinquish from your vocabulary and let them go, and some words that you might bring into your vocabulary and use more frequently and deliberately. So if you want to have a look at that, just head to the website, lisawestgate.com. Right up the top, there's a button that says courses, and it will take you straight to it, and you can have a look at that. I'm going to give you a little insight into what is inside that course as an example of what I'm talking about today. So let's choose the word try. Okay, and some of you may have heard me use this as an example before. So a lot of people will talk about things that they're trying to do. They're trying to lose weight. They're trying to go to the gym. They're trying to think better thoughts. They're trying to be happier. They're trying to be less angry or snappy at our loved ones. What else do people try and do? Just trying to look after myself better. Right? You get the picture. Lots of us state that we are trying to improve ourselves. So in the context of mental health, I do hear a lot people who are trying to be happier. They're trying to be happier. They want to be happier, and they're trying to be happier or be happy more often. So let's have a look at that. First of all, if you have not identified what happy means for you, what are your KPIs for happiness? What are your key performance indicators? How do you know when you are happier? If you haven't painted that picture, if you don't know what happy looks like for you, that is going to make it more challenging to achieve happiness if you actually don't know where that is or what it looks like, first of all. Second of all, if you are trying to be happy, let's talk about the word try. Now, I'm going to give you a quick little exercise. Play along. What I want you to do is close your eyes, and I want you to exactly follow my next instructions, which is to try and open your eyes. Now, if anybody's opened their eyes, you didn't follow the instruction. The instruction was not open your eyes. The instruction was try and open your eyes. What happens? Your eyebrows go up and your eyelids stay closed. Interesting, right? So trying to open your eyes is not the same as open your eyes. Let's try another one, all right? Find an object nearby to you. Maybe it's your phone if you're listening on your phone, or a pen or something. I'm going to use this Sharpie as an example if you're watching on the video. All right, so I'm going to try and pick up the Sharpie. Okay, here's what's going to happen. You ready? You can't just pick up the pen, because that would be picking up the pen or the item, right? That's just picking it up. We're not picking it up. We're trying to pick it up. Ready? No. Try means to put in a lot of effort into not achieving the goal or the outcome. Hands up if I blew your mind. Try means putting in a lot of effort to not do the thing. Oh shit. What have you been trying to do that you're not doing? So don't beat yourself up too much, because most people use the word try with really like positive intentions, right? I'm trying to eat healthier. Yep, cool. All right. So it's not just you. It's all right. It's not your fault. But now you know what can you do instead, right? So in the course around language, mind your fucking language, I do make some recommendations about some other words that you may want to drop into your language. You may choose to drop into your language when you remove words like try. And if you're going to break up with try, you want to have some other words that you can pop in its place so that you actually start moving towards achieving those goals that you have been trying to achieve, right? For example, choose is great, right? My eyes are closed. I choose to open my eyes. I'm choosing to open my eyes. That's a lot easier than trying to open your eyes, because my eyes just popped open when I just chose to open them. I can choose to pick up the Sharpie. Ta-da! I did it. Okay, as opposed to, again, the energy of try, which is, no, I'm not getting anywhere. Oh, well, what do we say? I'll keep trying. So today we've had a good talk about language, about the power of language, the words you use, the language you use creates the world you live in. If you live in a world of trying, because you use that word a lot, you live in a world of possibly not achieving the goals that you want to achieve. If you live in a world of shoulds, I'm going to guess that there's a lot of judgment in your space. Self-judgment, judgment of others, people judging you, right? Should is a judgy word. Again, if you want to know more, definitely go check out the course. Head to the website, click courses at the top menu bar. Very easy to get to. It'll take you straight there. It's a course that is able to be done under an hour. It's under $100. It's a no-brainer, and it's really going to give you some great insights into some further language shifts that are going to then create energetic shifts that are then going to get you on the way to actually achieving those goals and outcomes that you want, that you have been trying to achieve for some time. I trust that that's been useful. As always, I'm very open to feedback. I love hearing from you guys. I do want to give a big shout out, as promised, to Warren, our first Epiphanish Plus subscriber, who, as a Epiphanish Plus subscriber, I'm actually going to gift access to that mini course for this week. So if you sign up to Epiphanish Plus, you will get bonus episodes. So there's already a bonus episode, some extra conversation that I had with the amazing Scott Carson from last week. That's already in there. Super, super valuable, raw, open, honest conversation. He was such a star. And as further courses and offers come through, my Epiphanish Plus subscribers are going to be the first ones that get special deals. So that's something also for you to consider. Again, head to the website, lisawestgate.com, and right on the top of the menu next to the courses button is a button that says podcast. You can click there and that will take you to where you can become a Epiphanish Plus subscriber. I love hearing from all of you. It's been wonderful, the feedback so far. I trust this has been useful for you also, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon with my next guest.